Hey guys, in this video we're going to look at the separation of powers. The 2014 exam asked students to explain the principal separation of powers, which was worth 3 marks. A straightforward question on this principle can really be worth anywhere between 2 and 5 marks. Basically, you need 5 key points to answer any question on the separation of powers. These points are: define the principle, the legislative function, the executive function, the judicial function, and the reason for having a separation of powers. The amount that you need to elaborate on these points depends on how much the question is worth. For now, let's imagine we're answering a 5-mark question. Firstly, you have to define the principle in 1 or 2 sentences. As you will have learned in class, separation of powers means that the ability to control the law is split between 3 different bodies, all of which act as checks and balances on each other. Next, you should explain the 3 different functions. There's the legislative function, which involves the power to make law. Chapter 1 of the Constitution of Australia states that Parliament is the body with the ability to pass legislation. Next, we have the executive function. That refers to the power to administer the law. In other words, to ensure that the law is carried out. An example of administering the law is making sure that the federal police are equipped to enforce the law. Now, Chapter 2 of the Constitution gives this power to the Governor-General, but in reality, the Governor-General acts on the advice of the government. Then we have the judicial function, which is held by the judiciary, also known as the courts. Courts have the power to apply the law. Chapter 3 of the Constitution gives courts this power. Finally, you need to mention the reason for the separation of powers. We need it so that no one body has too much power, and therefore this principle prevents corruption. So there we go. That's how you answer a question on...
But Angus, how do we answer that question if it's only worth 2 or 3 marks?
Good question, Michaela. You still need to cover the 5 main points, but you basically need to strip them to their bare essentials. I would combine point 1 and point 5, for example. The separation of powers means that the ability to control the law is split between 3 bodies so that no one body has too much power and corruption can be prevented. Then, for each of your functions, take them down to 1 sentence. For example, the judicial function, applying the law, is controlled by the courts, and leave it at that. So let's go over it one more time. In any question you get that asks you to explain the separation of powers, you need your 5 key points: definition, legislative function, executive function, judicial function, and the reason for having a separation of powers. Thanks for watching, and happy studying.